Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Dawes County Board of Commissioners work session. Today's Thursday, July the 21st, 2022. Appreciate those with us in attendance as well as those that are with us online. We'll start out with a public hearing. This is the 2022 millage rate and property tax, second of three hearings. The first hearing was held July the 7th, 2022, and the third hearing will be held at 6 o'clock on August the 4th, 2022. At the last meeting, as I told the board, and I'll remind the citizens that are here today and listening, is the recommendation it'd be to roll the millage rate back from its current 7.625 to 7.2225. And that will provide a tax levy of approximately $14,695,708. And with that being said, I'll open up this hearing. Is anyone here to speak on the 2022 millage rate and property tax? Anyone here to speak on 2022 millage rate and property tax? Anyone? Seeing none, I'll close that hearing. The third hearing will be held on August the 4th at 6 o'clock, at which time the board could decide to vote if they so desire. We'll move on into new business. First up, we have presentation of results of the FY 2021 audit. Bates Carter, Amanda Wilson. Amanda.
Can you turn that mic on so they can hear on the home?
Yep.
There should be a button somewhere.
There you go.
Can you hear me better?
Yep.
Excellent. My name's Amanda Wilson. Thank you for having me here. I'm an audit partner at Bates Carter, and I'm here to present the results of the 2021 audit report for the year ended December 31st, 2021. The independent auditor's report is the report that we're issuing with these financial statements. To give you some clarification, the county's responsibilities are to present the financial statements, and our responsibilities as auditors is to express an opinion on the fair presentation of those financial statements in accordance with standards that are acceptable in accordance with auditing standards in the United States of America. The opinion that we've released with these financial statements is an unmodified opinion, which colloquially is known as a clean opinion. It's the highest audit opinion that can be received. The county has issued an annual comprehensive financial report, and this includes additional reporting that is to increase the transparency and the full disclosures to the financial statement users. One of the things that I'd like to point out is that this is not required for the county to put these kinds of efforts into the presentation of their financial statements to their financial statement users, but it does provide a lot of additional information. The county is applying for its 16th Certificate of Achievement of Excellence for this presentation of the full annual comprehensive financial report. And across the state of Georgia, out of all the cities and counties and authorities and school districts that can apply for this certificate from the Government Finance Officers Association, there are roughly only 150 that are issued to Georgia entities every year. So I wanted to point out that the county does prioritize making these additional disclosures available for its financial statement users. The financial statements include the governmental activities and business type activities of the county, which will include the general fund, the SPLOST fund, the American Rescue Plan Act, those are the major funds of the governmental activities, and then all the other non-major governmental funds. The business type activities include the solid waste and the DCAR GIS fund. Component units are also presented in the financial statements, and those will include the Health Department and the Development Authority and the Industrial Development Authority. So to briefly touch on some of the major funds, I'll begin with the general fund, which houses most of the activity of the county. The revenues of the general fund increased about $3 million in 2021 compared to what we had seen coming in 2020. Overall, that's about a 9% increase in revenues. Most of that increase is related to property tax. The property tax increase is about $1.3 million, but I will point out that that is also in correlation with a rollback of the millage rate. So that increase in property taxes is due to increased assessed values. Motor vehicle TAVT taxes increased yet again this year. And so in 2021, we saw an increase of $425,000 coming into the county. That's about a 20% increase from what we had seen collected in 2020. Again, good indicators of economic growth and continuance in the county. Sales taxes also increased by about 20%, showing an increase of $1.8 million. This is again another indicator of good economic growth. There are increased transfers from other funds, which mostly includes SPLOST money that was used for the IT infrastructure that the general fund is mostly providing the facilitation of those expenditures for. Intergovernmental revenue decreased by $1.9 million, but that is due to an unusual event that happened in 2020 with the Etowah Water and Sewer Authority. So that was not repeated in the current year. There's also expenditures that we'll see on the next slide that also decreased related to that transaction. And another point that I wanted to bring to your attention was that the increase in licenses and permit fees increased by about $464,000, which is almost a 40% increase from 2020, and that's all due to local growth. Looking at the expenditures in 2021, they also increased by about $3.1 million, right in line with where we saw the increases in revenue. The main expenditure increases that we're seeing are due to public safety, which is mostly related to increased personnel costs for public safety. The transfers to other funds increased by about $2 million, and those are from planned transfers mostly into the capital projects fund. And again, we see intergovernmental expenditures decreasing overall almost $1 million, and most of that is again related to the Etowah Water and Sewer Authority transaction that occurred in 2020 only. When comparing revenues to the budget, revenues received were over the final budget by $6.3 million. The tax revenue exceeded the budget by about $4.4 million. And that's mostly due to increased revenues coming in from TAVT and intangible tax receipts. Sales tax revenue also exceeded the budget by about $2.4 million, also due to the increase that we were seeing in 2021, not included in the budget conservatively. When comparing expenditures to the budget, expenditures were below the final budget by just about $224,000, which is quite close. So that is mainly seen throughout all of the departments through intensive control of budgetary expenditures on a departmental level. Salaries and benefits across all departments were about $1.6 million less than the budget. And I would like to make it clear that that's mostly due to intergovernmental revenues that are coming in to fund some of these expenditures, and we are seeing them put into the American Rescue Plan Act fund for the current years. When looking at the trend of expenditures to revenues in the general fund across the last 5 years, as you can see, revenues have exceeded expenditures, which means that there's been a growth in fund balance every year for the past 5 years. We're seeing an increase in that growth of fund balance in the last 2 years, and that's primarily because there's intergovernmental revenues that are coming in to support the expenditures related to a lot of the public safety and public health costs. When looking at the general fund unreserved fund balance ratio, this is comparing how much in the fund balance in the general fund is compared to the annual expenditures for the general fund. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends that this percentage be at least 15 to 25%. What we are seeing at the end of the 2021 fiscal year is that there's about 50% in this ratio, which means that the county has enough resources on hand as of the end of December of 2021 to cash flow about half a year's worth of expenditures. Going on to long-term debt for the governmental activities, there are the total long-term debt for the governmental activities is about $2.5 million. That makes up capital, their contracts payable that's related to the Etowah Water and Sewer Authority, and a capital lease that's related to the fire trucks. The interest rates on both of these are less than 3%, and they are both going to mature within the next few years. I wanted to put that into perspective for you all. So I did a comparison of the debt that's being held by Dawson County for its governmental activities compared to comparably sized counties across the state of Georgia. The counties that I used for comparison are listed on the slide, and the comparable county activity is the orange line that you'll see at the top. Dawson County's debt that's being held for its governmental activities is the blue line at the bottom. So I wanted to highlight the fact that the county is being very conservative in the long-term debt that it's taking out for governmental activities. The American Rescue Plan Act is a new fund that's coming in 2021. It is a major fund due to the size of the activity that's being recorded in this fund. It's to account for the money that's being received under the American Rescue Plan Act. During 2021, $1.1 million was spent and recognized as revenue, and that was spent on premium pay for eligible employees. At the end of 2021, the remaining balance of funds that were available to be used by the county in future years is about $1.4 million. And under ARPA standards, that's available to be used through 2026. SPLOST is another major fund, so I wanted to talk about it specifically. In 2021, we saw collections of $11.8 million, which is a 17% increase, or about $2 million over the 2020 collections. Expenditures that were attributed to this fund in 2021 account for about $6 million. And there is more detail about the specific projects that these are going to in the schedule of SPLOST fund activity that's included in your financial report. All of the money was for projects that were on the approved referendum. And the remaining cash balance at 12/31/2020 to be used for future projects under the approved referendum is about $15 million. Moving into the business type activities, solid waste had an operating income of about $10,000, which is a little bit more than what we had seen in 2020. The increase is due to decreased costs in services and charges. And that would include the depreciation costs that are attributed to this fund of about $43,000. So it is carrying the cost of maintaining its assets. The GIS fund had an operating loss of about $82,000, which is what we had seen in the previous year, and it's being supported by a transfer from the general fund. And finally, just to be able to consolidate some of this information about the intergovernmental revenues that have been coming into the county to be able to support the reaction to the COVID-19 pandemic. The main sources of funding that has been coming in is from the CARES Act in 2020 and the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act in 2021. And I wanted to be able to detail some of that funding together. So what we saw in 2020 was the CARES Act provided just over $1.1 million to the county. And what has been received by the county in 2021 for the ARPA Act is about $2.5 million. So that's all been available for the county to use in response to the pandemic. So that concludes my overview of 2021. May I entertain any questions?
Questions from the board? Thank you, ma'am. Good.
Thank you very much for having me here. And I would like to thank Vicki and her incredible team in the finance department. It's an ongoing process to prepare an audit, and it takes the full 6 months. And we've really enjoyed working with the finance department, and thank you for your efforts to support this increased financial reporting that the county prioritizes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. All right. Move on to presentation of request for addition of position classification, Emergency Service Director Danny Thompson. Danny.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to come before you. So tonight, a little background. Dawson County Fire and EMS currently has positions in grade for firefighter EMTAs and firefighter paramedics. Over the years, we have only hired certified individuals with both of those particular certifications, and therefore has caused us to eliminate some potential candidates out there if we didn't have the appropriate position classification to place them in. So currently, we are sitting at 5 unfilled vacancies. We're still receiving applications. While not a overwhelming number of applications, we are still receiving them. But from time to time, we receive applications where an applicant may lack one or more of those certifications. What we're requesting, and we worked with Human Resources, got the approval from the county manager as outlined in the handbook, worked with HR to establish a pay grade, what that salary range would be, and everything. So it's not an addition of any positions. It's not an addition of any funding. It's just given us a different level of classification to be able to cast a wider net in the applicant pool for potential candidates. We've got to be aggressive in attracting candidates and filling those vacancies and continuing to provide services to the community. And this is just that opportunity. You should have an Excel spreadsheet there that shows the top 2, paramedic and the firefighter EMT, are our current 2 position and grades. And you can see the hourly there. The next one that we're requesting is firefighter EMT B. And so that's basically a 5% reduction in the EMTA pay. And then the next one is what we would refer to as an EMT recruit. So if someone comes to us and they have their fire certifications, but they're not EMT trained, it gives us the ability to still make a job offer with certain stipulations, but obviously it's at a lower rate of pay until they obtain those certifications. And it could be vice versa, that they come in and they have the medical certifications, but we can send them to fire school. So again, as we continue to grow as a county, this just gives us greater options of being able to hire more candidates. And I'll answer any questions that the board may have. You should also have the job descriptions. I think we attached the job descriptions in there as well.
Okay, so firefighter EMTB, that person basically could drive the med unit.
That is correct. And actually, Mr. Chairman,
Just kind of explain.
the state back in during the COVID, they've actually created an even lower position than that now. It's an EMTR because a lot of counties during COVID found themselves essentially without a person to drive the med unit. So they've really had to get creative. They passed a new position statewide. We're not looking to entertain that position at this time. That position would essentially fall under the recruit position and salary grade.
So what, Chief, what would your time frame be? Let's say you hired me as an EMTB to get up to an EMTA. How long do I have?
Typically, we would offer a year. We have to have some flexibility because we saw during COVID, a lot of the EMT programs shut down. And that's no fault to the employee. So we do take that into consideration. But it's typical that when we work with Human Resources to offer a job, that's a stipulation that they obtain their EMTA within 1 year.
And down to your recruit. So would you be looking for a recruit that had one or the other already? Is that what you're looking for? Or would you be looking for somebody that didn't have either one?
All of the above.
Okay. And I guess my question in reference to that, if when I look at the grade, when I'm looking at the grade, I could understand maybe it being a 12E if they had one or the other, but I don't know that I'd want to be a 12E if they didn't have either one, and we had to get them all the way through until they at least got one of them. I guess we could look at some flexibility there.
And obviously, if it's the desire of the board, we can go back, and if they have no certification, I guess we can go back to a lower level. I figured the recruit would somewhat cover that, whether candidate A was a firefighter but didn't have his EMS certification, or candidate B had his EMS certification but didn't have his firefighter, or candidate C, they didn't have either. any of those three candidates, we would start at the recruit level. And then as they obtained the the certifications as outlined in the job stipulations, then they would get the necessary pay bump to match it.
All right, so how long, let me ask you this, how long does it take to become an EMTB?
EMTB can be done in about 4 weeks.
4 weeks. Okay. And so your time frame would be the same for recruit as it
The
would be?
recruit class is going to be probably 8 to 12 to cover all of the necessary, because they're going to have firefighter 1, hazmat awareness, and hazmat ops in that
Mhm.
program. And that would be a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Okay.
To
So
transition
you would have
into
them
that.
strictly in training the whole time?
That's correct.
Well, and to go into the, excuse me, Chris.
Go ahead.
And going to the academy, they've got to be sponsored by a department too, right?
Correct. So let's just say that we had a single person that we wanted to plug into this. Obviously, we work with the training chief. He tells us when, hey, the Georgia Fire Academy is offering their firefighter program down there, starts October 1, and it will go for a period of 8 weeks. So this would now enable us to do exactly that. We would be able to hire that candidate, put them into that school with those job stipulations that they pass it to be able to maintain it, their position.
And based on that, that was along the same lines as my question. When we send them through that school, we still have the 2-year clawback thing, don't we? Where they.
So
they don't-
obviously, we haven't put that in there. That is obviously something we can very much do. And that's just simply taking the existing contract that we've already worked through legal. We take the paramedic name off of it, and we can plug that in there and then work with, HR and make that happen.
Because we did it with paramedics, but we just didn't do it with the firefighters.
And that's something it's pretty easy. It's just a matter of, retooling the contract, changing names in it. And the good thing, so if we're teaching it internally, our own instructors are the ones who are teaching the fire certification.
Right.
So from a money standpoint, we're not paying kind of like for the paramedic class where I have to pay $5,000 or $6,000 for you to go to school. I'm not having to do that anymore. I'm using my own resources and assets within the organization to teach the program to get them caught up. And even if I send somebody to the state of Georgia allows us to attend classes there for free. So the only thing I really have to pay for is dorms while they're down there. And oftentimes they can stay on site for free as well. So
We do have a ramp up cost, as I've heard you say in the past. in the
Every-
sheriff's office with
yes.
like equipment that is fitted to them as an individual and things like that.
and that would be if I hired somebody who met all these qualifications.
Right.
So
Right.
yes, there are startup costs for all of it.
So the 5 vacancies you currently have is that a mixture of paramedic and EMT or?
It is, Mr. Chairman. It's what is it? We got 2 EMTs right now and 3 medics. Okay.
That's easier to get to
Yes, much
Yeah.
more
than
manageable.
it would be the other way around.
It's much more manageable. Yes.
Good. Any other questions?
Well, yeah, does this in any way, I don't really know how to put this, but does it compromise the level of service that you're gonna give people when you get out there on a call?
It does not. It actually
Okay.
ensures continuity of service because right now, if you're running with the vacancies, nobody's providing it. So
That's right.
if you hire somebody and you get them trained up, their training is ongoing. And the chairman's
Oh,
asked me
yeah.
numerous times, how many hours do you got to have?
Yes,
It's hundreds of hours. And so the
Yes.
training doesn't stop at this recruit and basic EMT level. It's ongoing to the day they retire forever.
so at least you've got somebody in there to,
That's right.
Yeah.
And the flip side to that is to remember, when you run with vacancies, to maintain minimum staffing levels, you're paying overtime or part-time.
yes. mhm.
Okay, so if you are hiring somebody that you can get in there to fill these vacancies, then you're reducing your overtime budget.
And the best thing about it, regardless of which one of these you had in there, it beats shutting the truck down.
beats shutting a truck down. We don't shut trucks down. We make it happen. That means if we have to come in and ride, then we come in and ride, don't we?
Been there, done that.
I know you
I
do.
just want the care to
Stay
be
the
the same. That was my concern. I didn't know if we were just lowering the level and be like sending me out there who would know nothing.
That's all right. We get you trained up.
You know, oh, you train me. well, I
Starts on
don't-
Monday at
You
8.
don't need a job at the end of the year.
That's right. That's it.
That's
But I
right.
I just want us to maintain care, proper level of cares.
Absolutely.
And I want the people to be trained to deliver that.
And,
you know.
and again, while we hire them at a lower level,
Yes.
they're going to have to, by the job requirement and stipulations that we put in there when they get hired, they're going to have to get to that
I
top
got a
level.
time frame.
Okay.
But we're just giving them time to get there. And that it just enables us to fill a vacancy and to still
Mhm.
be able to offer a level of service to the community.
It also goes back to growing your own.
It is, and
Mhm.
that's, there's a big pool of candidates out there that we don't hire, we don't look at because of that.
Mhm.
And a lot of them live and have grown up here all their life.
Other questions for Chief Tom? Thank you. Next up, we have presentation of request for funding for fire hydrants. Chief?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little background history, Etowah Water and Sewer is installing some water lines in several subdivisions over the years. 3 of those subdivisions are Dawsonville Heights, over here off Highway 9, Northwoods over off Grizzle, and Couch Road. When those water lines were installed, they were stubbed out for hydrants to be added in the future, but they did not have hydrants placed on them. Over the years, we have worked on getting a lot of these service areas up to speed, hydrants added in, and kind of filling those gaps that were out there on those old water lines. And also Etowah is in the midst of several main upgrades throughout the county. One of them being Needham Road and Kelly Bridge, which is an area that will hugely benefit from water. Obviously, you've seen everything up and down Price Road, so there's some areas over there that they're increasing the mains, and again on Blacks Mill out there. So with that, before you is a request for funding for a proposed addition of 17 more fire hydrants in the above listed delivery areas. These additions provide valuable waters in the areas that have limited or no water supply currently. We're requesting to purchase $76,400 to be funded from fund balance. You should have a list also that was attached in your packet that had those hydrants. 5 of those hydrants that's in this list are those that were already on existing mains. And so we're just kind of cleaning that up. Once we get these 5 done, every main that had a stop on it will have completed at this time. This will clean that up. So there'll be no more mains out there that has a stop but didn't have a hydrant. So we will have cleaned that up. And then you see the rest of them. Probably the most are Etowah's tying in off of Needham Road. They're coming in off of Forsyth County, Maine, coming down Needham Road. There'll be 3 or 4 hydrants on Needham, and then going back toward the general store there on KBR. There's going to be another 3 hydrants down through there. And I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Questions?
We used to fund hydrants out of, I can't remember what account that was. Do you remember that we had
We had some splosh,
Ocean-
we had some splosh money at one time that we funded them out of, but
I
that's.
think
run
when I
dry.
first, yeah, I think.
it was a
when
bucket
I-
that as it was builded up, we would fund hydrants out of. and I can't-
Yeah, so I know since I've been here, I think when I first come on, there was some money that was sitting and splossed, and it covered X amount of hydrants. There was discussion during budget that we would put a line item in there for hydrants every year. I think we backed off of that, and I think it was a desire of the board to bring it. One other time we had some money is when we had the sale of the land. $100,000 went to Intergov and
That's-
Planning
that's what it
Department.
was.
Another
That's what it was.
portion of the money came over to us to be
That's
able to
right.
fund some hydrants. And that way we didn't have to come before you all. The money was set aside in a separate account.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's been exhausted.
Correct.
Can you kind of explain the the multiple cost differences?
Yeah, don't worry, I asked the same question. So in working with Brooke and obviously Jackie Townley, some of the hydrants were already purchased by Townley Water at a lower cost. So they were already there, they were
Okay.
purchased at a lower
In
cost.
stock.
And then he had to price more hydrants. Obviously, construction costs have went up. So that price where you see that little group there of 5165,
Mhm.
that's the difference. What Brooke has advised me is that any cost overages over that 76,400, Etowah Water will absorb those costs. So if they've missed bid, they'll pay, not the county.
Okay.
They're going to absorb the cost.
Kind of what I figured, just wanted to ask.
Yes, sir.
You might ought to say that twice.
Say it one more time.
Yeah, you got that down. We
It's
understand.
recorded.
Yeah, okay, I'm.
We
gonna
got it
make sure.
recorded. We got it
Okay,
recorded.
good. Good.
Brooks probably just flipped his chair over in his office right now.
Any other questions for Chief Thompson?
Let's, if we look, because these are capital expenditures that are obviously ongoing. If we try to zoom out and look at a plan, I mean, we mentioned it in budget hearing, but what do you see as a plan that, in a number that we could potentially anticipate on an annual basis moving forward to be able to satisfy growth as well as updating the lines that Brooke and them are seeing?
So I'm gonna shoot from the hip on this and recall. I think we average typically annually between about 70 and $125,000 worth of requests that would come to. Obviously, a lot of it's just got to depend on what Etowah's
Etowah
project
Water,
is for that
absolutely.
year. And then how far, where at they're running that
Yeah.
main, because
Yeah.
we have ordinance that if it's in the residential areas, it's at 500 feet intervals. If we're out more in the rural areas, then we can extend that to the 1,000 foot. So there's some variables in there, but I think if you're looking from a budgetary standpoint that you want to just create a capital account and you want to say, look, we're going to stick $75,000 in it. You can use it up to that, and then anything else would have to come before you. Obviously, that's something to consider. It would stop.
Yeah.
This, but you know, if they come in and say, well, we're going to do 5 miles of main this year, you're probably going to go over a little bit.
He's got Brooks got a map that shows
Upgrade schedule.
upgrade schedules but if it's a new development or new subdivision,
Pass that.
the
to contractor.
developer
pays
pays
for
for that.
Right.
Etowah doesn't pay for that, or the county doesn't pay for that.
Mhm.
So these are existing lines or future lines to upgrade to hit area of growth.
Right.
And so that's the ones they're adding on there, but he's got a map. It shows for the next 20 years, I think.
That's correct.
I know.
Yeah.
I know originally, when we first put that money in Splosh, it was like 46 miles
Mhm.
of line that was in the ground that didn't have a hydrant. You know, and at that time, I think we were looking at 1,000 foot in between each one of them. We kind of configured it to that right there, but
Sharon, we also get points on that for
yep.
ISO.
Well, I
I
love
don't know where we stand now
Are you?
mileage wise. It's probably still in 30s.
Well, from a risk management background and perspective, it makes a big difference to have these things in front of
Yes.
people's houses within 1,000 foot distance when
Yeah.
they go to shop homeowners insurance. It makes a drastic difference. And whoever lives in these areas should be thankful for that.
They
Makes
should
our
be-
job easier.
They should have the
Much.
same services anybody lives on the east side.
Makes our job easier.
Everywhere there's water. Any other questions for Chief Thompson? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next up, we have presentation of Assembly Room Equipment Budget and Cooperative Agreement Approval. West Public Information Officer Laura Fulcher and Purchasing Manager Melissa Hall. Laura, you gonna do that?
Hi, good
You
afternoon.
got to wait.
Yeah. So a little background on this project. WH Platts actually provided some equipment for us back in 2020 when we had the COVID breakout, so that we could provide virtual meetings for everybody to watch from home. The board approved in 2020 for the budget $76,241 to complete the upgrade. So since the 2022 budget had been approved, Melissa and I have been working with Platts in order to get the contract under 100,000, get everything that we still need. Unfortunately, with COVID, beginning of the year, we couldn't get some of the equipment. So there's been a delay in that. Equipment now cost more than it originally did. And so I am now here asking for more money so that we can complete this project.
Is it more money to do the same thing?
It is,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and actually I took off
Have
some,
anybody know anything about inflation? Does that have anything to do with it? Yeah,
Just a little.
yeah.
and I actually did remove some items from the original list, because it is stuff that we could add later. It wasn't imperative to have that at this time.
Okay.
So the final cost that we are asking for to increase is 23,501. So that will bring the total for the budget at 99,742. It's under 100.
Under 100.
So,
You could buy a tank of gas. What's the difference?
You know how big your car is.
Yeah.
and I will say the installation for this, we were trying to shoot for September, because we do have a longer break between our meetings. But we are now looking at December into January. And part of that is in working with Kristen, our county clerk. She'd asked that if we could wait until after our last meeting of the year, that gives a longer break for when they need to get in here, and we'll have training and everything for the start of the new meeting in January.
Plus you have to deal with court and all that as well.
Yes.
That do things in here too.
Remind me what we're upgrading.
So on this one, we will be upgrading speakers. So the sound will be better. Volume control, the voting system is actually the largest component. And so with the new voting system, there will be touch screen monitors up at the dais for everybody. Everybody will have individual computers up here as well. And so it's pretty much an overhaul of the technology in this room.
This stuff has been here since it was built.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Are
we're
you
just,
saying something's old? Did you see how he looked at me? I noticed that, but it had, a lot of this stuff has been here years and years and years.
it has, and we've reached a
40s.
point.
Yeah.
Well, we've just reached a point where we can't actually do any more upgrades technology wise with what we have.
Or repairs.
Or repairs. Can't get the parts.
Correct.
But
So-
you will be locked into this amount. I mean, even though we're waiting, doing it later, this amount
Be a
will still,
contract.
Yes.
it will be, okay. Cause, well, I don't know, it may drop by then. I don't know.
Yes. Confirm
Okay.
that with Melissa. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And so you do want to move this to the voting session
If
so
we
that we can
could.
get it locked in. Okay. Y'all good with that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, now we're up to discussion of the merit pay program. Last meeting, we talked about trying to figure out what we could do to ensure that we're able to keep the employees that we have. As we know how competitive all the markets are. And I talked to HR this morning and I don't know if whether I did that or not. We had 370 something full-time employees. 376, I believe. 323 and then what was it, 66? And mainly the part-time temporary people who like work for voter registrar, maybe the park for swimming and stuff. Okay, I know in some of the discussion we had, we talked about maybe trying to set a number. The board would set a number and the criteria would come from basically our policy, which we already have. As we found out and talked about some last week. The county manager obviously, if the board's desire, could manage that. Also, and she doesn't have it tonight, and I told her she didn't have to have it tonight because I just asked her today. I asked HR in reference to with what we've done, over the last couple of years. Now, we did the salary study in 2019, I believe it was. Where would our employees fall if we actually followed the thing with what we've done? Where would they be at today on that chart if we had actually followed the the step increase and things like that right there. So she's working on that. And I told her that I didn't know that I didn't think y'all would probably vote on this tonight. We'd probably try to get a little bit more information. And that would give her some time to kind of put that together. So I just kind of like to see what we've done and over the last couple of years, where does that put us based on that salary study, which obviously would be out of date by now because most things are out of date in a year or two. But I think it would be a good start maybe for us to have, a little bit of that information to be able to work from. And then that would maybe help us come up with a dollar amount. And then by that time, David be back and he can kind of speak to some of the things that he's looked at and done in reference to. We've talked about merit before. So I think that would give us a little bit more information. So that's my thing. Y'all got anything?
I think we talked too about fundamentally changing how we implement the raises instead of just across the board. For everybody, we empower the people that know the employees the best, which is department heads, and allow them to have some
No, a true merit system.
right
You're giving
input.
true merit grade
Yeah,
or merit increase.
right. Give each
Basically-
one of them a bucket to be able to allocate out amongst their staff based on their performance.
And we would be basically just setting a dollar on it.
But and also approving a standardization that
Yeah.
they would follow.
Yeah, and they provide that, to us so we could prove that.
And if I could just interject one thing, Chairman, and I did not send this to you. Last time we were discussing the classification aspect of this, and I sent you some of those employee handbook provisions, but in the employee handbook, we do have a chart that provides for, for a correlation of percent increase to salary for the scoring on the evaluation. And so that would be really easy to leave it as is and just, build in your percentage allocations. I mean, as it specifies currently, it's specific enough to say if your evaluation score is a 5, that means you get a 3%. I mean, it could be that specific, or you could leave it to some discretion, but it goes on from there. If it's a 4.0 to 4.9, you get a 2% and then on from there. And so we do have that already method in our employee handbook. And so I think what you're talking about is taking that to the next step, which is appropriate, but just wanted to call that to your attention because we want to make sure we work that into whatever plan you come up with, either to modify it or to work off of it.
I spoke with David a day or so ago about this and, he kind of referenced that, what you were just talking about, that plan and, given if we decided to, do a 5% raise, we would give each department based on the amount of employees that they had a certain amount of money. And then department heads based off the evaluations could distribute that money. And then it would still go back to Dave to do a final approval on it. And, I think he's got and I don't want to speak for him, and he can tell us about it a little bit more, but I think he's got a pretty good idea of how to kind of lay that out. And at least it made sense to me when we talked the other day. So, but I think we're kind of getting there, and I think it'll be up to us to, the hardest part is going to be figure out how much,
Dollar amount.
a dollar amount.
Well, is that what you meant when you said set a number?
Yeah.
You didn't mean a percent,
No,
like she-
dollars.
a dollar.
Oh,
Okay.
the main thing to that would be too, I mean, and I agree with what she said, because it's already in the handbook. The key to that is actually doing a proper evaluation. And not just throwing down a bunch of 5s, so that everybody in your department gets. And that would be obviously an educational part for Dave, HR, and all those that would be making those decisions, because you can't give everybody a 5 if you only got a certain percentage of the pot. Because you ain't gonna get able to give everybody 3%. That ain't the way it's gonna work. So they would have to understand the leadership, have to understand how to do a proper evaluation.
And that's one thing that I asked Dave about, because that was a concern that I had, and he said that was part of the checks about it going back to him and HR
Uh-huh.
before it was even approved, that it wasn't just a, if we give a department a 5% increase or, $10,000, $20,000, it didn't just go across the board. It actually went to the merit system.
Yeah, and when you look at, and I filled out many of these evaluations, Tim has too. And when you look at that, and I don't know exactly which one we're using today, but when I was working, if you were doing your job, which was what your job description said that you were doing, you were a 3. You weren't a 4, you weren't a 5, but if you were actually doing your job, which is following everything on your job description, you were on time, you did everything you're supposed to do. That didn't make you a 4. You had to do above and beyond your job to be a 4, and you had to be exceptional to be a 5. So, and we talked about that a lot, Tim and I did, and when we were at the fire department, and I don't know how many we sent back to people to redo, because it clearly states on the one we used to have, you had to give a reason. If you gave somebody a 4 or a 5, don't send me a document that had nothing for an explanation if you got beyond a 3. And of course, below a 3 means you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
and the board, I brought it up last meeting, but Amanda brought it up in her first presentation. One reason we put back $3.2 million in the reserve was because of our employees and our department heads and our county manager. And fund balance, they recommend 15 to 25%. We got 50.15. I know some of that's probably gonna be used at the end of the year or during this year. But we've got, and you made the statement to start off that, we got to keep the people we've got. Fire departments, they're still trying to hire 5 short, sheriff department short. Public Works is short. They've been short ever since for the last 3 or 4 years. Other departments are short. But I'd like for the HR and finance to get together and bring us a number, because I still would like to see something before the end of the year, a number between 3 to 5% raise for the employees. I mean, we know the economy's tough right now. The county knows it's tough, and we're being conservative, but also the employees knows it's tough. I mean, they're dealing with the same stuff we're dealing with, is gas and groceries and childcare and everything else. But I'd love to see us do something, because what we're talking about, this merit system, that's gonna be next year, with next year's budget. That number we're coming up
Well, we can
with.
do it this year.
I mean, like I said last meeting, we got some employees, it's gonna be 18 months if we put to January.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
think
They
we
won't, they
could,
won't get it in January.
and I think we could, depending on what the board wants to do, obviously, we could implement the merit system now. We could set a dollar amount and implement that now, and then that would go to the people now, as soon as it's voted on and approved by this board. And then we could set another dollar amount in the budget. That would be for next year. So I think we're gonna have that ability. And I think some of the information that we're gonna get is gonna be able to tell us a little bit more about that. But that's a great idea. I mean, talk to finance and HR and them get together and kind of come up with a number that would, because I think it's important even now, when we look at giving raises, that we start the process of this merit system to show quality work is going to get you
Mhm.
better pay.
Yes.
It's gonna get you better pay. It's going, so I think we can do both. I think we can do a number now, and I think we can do a number in the budget that will go into effect next year. So that would be my recommendation.
Well, I mean, if we're keep putting money back, and I talked with Sharon about this today, if we keep putting money back in, we got to provide better service. We
Yeah.
can't ask for the taxes and the citizens to pay property tax, everything else, if we're not providing more. So if we keep putting money back, we need to spend some of it.
And I think that's what we want to do.
And I think too, I mean, we might not just look at just only the merit system. I think that's important, but we may need to look at it across the board, you know, like Tim said,
That's-
3 to 5%, something like that, and the merit system, because the merit system is something we've been talking about for a while. I think y'all been talking about before I was even on the board, and I think that's something we need to get implemented, but with just the cost of living increases, I don't know that our current raises have kept up with that. I don't think they have. And I think that's something that we need to look at it both ways.
Like Chairman said, we did a pay study. We implemented the pay study, we were already behind 3%. I mean, that behind what other counties and cities had already gave.
And that's one of the reasons I want us to know that number and where we're at. So that we can look at that and say, hey, if we had implemented this thing fully, this is where we'd be. And, or this employee, like, you just pick somebody out,
Mhm.
employee Tom or whatever. And say, he's still $2,000 below where he ought to be, But I think there's opportunity for us to fix it and even do what you said. But if we follow the evaluation process, everybody gets something unless they was a 1.
Right.
If
Yeah.
they're a 1, they probably don't need to be here.
Mhm.
They need to be looking for somebody else to do that job.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on that? Next up, we have the county manager report, and I've got Dave's report right here. Let's see. Key indicator report for the month of June, as well as the list of agreements and contracts is in the packet. In IT news, Devin Cox of IT GIS has successfully passed the GIS CI Core Technical Knowledge Exam and is now a certified GIS professional. Congratulations.
Ah. Wonderful. Speech, you've got to make a speech. No. That's wonderful.
It's great.
Yes.
IT continues to roll out of Dawson County, Georgia.gov email addresses, and it's going very well. As you know, you had that done today.
Mhm.
All right, implementation of 32 new body cameras for the sheriff's office is complete. Bids are in and a vendor has been selected for the wired infrastructure upgrade at the courthouse and the sheriff's office and detention center. And due to supply chain issues, the entire project may take up to a year to complete.
Mm.
What else is new?
I'm-
In Public Works news, the Elliott Road realignment widening project is they're in the process of locating utilities and clearly marking the right of way. We had some back and forth on that, so we're working on that and making sure everybody's on the same page. The River Park Canoe Put-in project, we're waiting on EPD buffer variance permit. So that could take a while. The transfer station retrofit project, we're looking into the alternate site conception option. I think Commissioner Gaines, I talked to Dave about that for his thing here. You had a request,
Transfers.
and we're waiting on estimates for transfer station core and shell repairs along the floor slide plate fabrication installation. Nix Bridge, River Overlook, and Afton Road asphalt widening project, basic failure patching is completed. Working on shoulder earthwork were needed in preparation for GDOT's widening work. The Dawson Forest 53 roundabout project right away and easement legal descriptions have been completed. The GEPD's municipal measure program and MMP waste and recycling management program. All that data has been finalized and submitted. And Shoal Creek 136 roundabout project, nothing to report at this time. He doesn't have anything to report. And let's see, I don't see. You see Angela? Okay, I'll skip that. Then Dawson County's Family Connections, they're going to have a family fair will be held from 6 to 11 Friday, July 29th at Main Street Park. There will be a free movie, free food, and fun. And last but definitely not least, Commissioner Fawcett's birthday is August the 1st. So it will be time for singing.
She can't leave the party.
I'm glad you told me. I forgot.
She forgot.
You better hope your husband remembers, unless you're gonna buy. your
Well,
own
you can
present.
forget that. That. no,
Well, you
that-
buy your own present.
You want me started off?
Somebody gonna have to.
Happy birthday.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Puppy love.
Happy birthday, dear Sharon.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you.
Okay.
Many more. 29 again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm staying there.
And that is Dave's report made by me. Got any questions? You can ask him. All right. County attorney report. No report. All right. No need for any kind of executive session, I don't think, Adderall.
No.
All right.
Unless there's any interest in resuming the discussion we had at the last executive session, I provided some materials, but haven't gotten any feedback yet. So
I've
Still-
not,
still
I've
looking
not
at it.
read
Okay.
it all.
I sent
Still
you a lot
looking.
of information, so that's fine.
It was a lot.
No problem.
A
Thank you.
lot of pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then that takes care of our work session. We'll take about a 10-minute break. We'll be back for the voting session. Thank you for your attendance. Both in person and online. Thank you.